Wonderful. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, David, for the opportunity as well. So Musgrave is, obviously we're progressing forward with our resource base. So a number of key points we have an existing resource of 600,000 ounces. The new Starlight discovery has grabbed everyone's attention. Obviously that's not in the current resource base. So that'll be new. The aim is to get that in the resource base later this year. So with White Light as well. So they're in 100% ground owned by Musgrave. We also have a joint venture with Evolution, which is significant. It's on the Salt Lake component of our ground. They're funding that as well. So there's another opportunity there we see going forward. We have lots of third-party mills in our district. And the analogue for us really is to find a Great Fingal. Great Fingal is about 6 deposits, making up that cluster of 2 million ounces at around 10 grams. So that's our goal and what we want to do going forward. So it's really to build that resource base at the moment, and that we can make a decision going forward about development. So just moving on to the next slide. As far as our corporate structure goes, we've got about 470 million shares on issue. We've got about 9 million in cash and another 2 million in liquid investments. So a reasonable market cap at the moment. But what we see with the Starlight discovery is the margin. Effectively, it's a fantastic margin because of the phenomenal grade and the near surface nature of the gold mineralisation. So we have had a change in over our register as well over the last 3 to 4 months. Another couple of significant holders coming in there and a number of gold funds coming in. So 1832 are now a substantial holder in us, and a number of other funds, both North American, European and Australian, now hold positions in Musgrave. So also a couple of high net worths in West Minex Group, which is Jeff Albers, and Jetasy, which is Charlie Harvey. And Evolution is another key component of our share registry. They hold 4%, and that's associated as well. And that came in about a year ago as far and linked to the joint venture. A key component of what we do is money in the ground. So we spend about 85% of our dollars in the ground. So we try and keep our administrative overheads very low. We think re-rate triggers for us going forward would be additional drilling at Starlight and looking for vertical continuity. So as we heard from Rob with Arden, Yilgarn gold is similar, and there's significant vertical continuity to a lot of Yilgarn gold deposits. We're hoping to see the same at Starlight. We've only drilled at the moment to about 250, 300 metres, and we're looking forward to continuing to drill that at depth. So we can see our opportunity there as we continue to drill. Obviously resource growth, that is what we're leading towards. And then new discoveries. What the Starlight opportunity has brought to us is a possibility for repetition. So the orientation of that deposit is different to everything else we see in the belt, and that has meant we can turn the rigs around and continue to drill as we progress new exploration targets. Moving on to the next slide. So this really puts what we have in perspective as far as spatial awareness goes. So Lena deposit in the top left-hand corner of that image. Break of Day are the orange and red lines running in that northeasterly direction. And then Starlight, the purple line there, is cross-cutting it. So it's cross-cutting it at a high angle. We call it a link lode. And then further to the south, we have the White Light lode. That is repetition, what we call a repetition of Starlight. So there's opportunity, and what we're showing with White Light is opportunity for these repetitions in the belt. So there's a lot of work to go forward to do, but we think there's definitely opportunity to find more of those. Moving on to the next slide. This is a 3D image, so it's just putting together what we were seeing before in a 3D perspective. And if you look at the slide on the right, you've got the Twilight and Velvet lodes as part of Break of Day. This is also only looking at an area of about 500 metres of strike. And then the orange Starlight lode cross-cutting it, you can see from that image, and then the white light green lode to the south. So this is what we're providing, is these opportunities to find new high-grade lodes. And you can see some of the phenomenal grades we're getting at Starlight, including 77 metres at 13 grams, only about 7 metres below surface. And then the recent intercept we announced about a week ago, which was 14 metres at 190 grams, starting at about 4 metres below surface. So again, just moving on to the next slide. Hopefully we can do that and move through. The next slide is a couple of cross sections. Looking at Starlight, you can see some of the phenomenal grades we're seeing there. And again, just to reiterate, very close to surface. We're looking at about 2 meters of hard pan over the top of this. So hard pan is a transported cover sequence over the top of the deposit, and that's really meant that it hasn't been discovered before. And obviously, that has prevented any surface expression. So that 2 meters of hard pan also makes it difficult to use geochemistry in an effective manner because of all the old workings around the area we're looking at. So we've got old workings only about 30 to 40 metres from the actual discovery, but are on a different orientation. They're on the main break of day trend in that northeast direction. So this is a virgin discovery. Just moving on to the next slide again. This is a long section. So a long section is in the vertical plane of the mineralisation at Starlight. You can see there's only a limited strike, but from a very high grade and some really solid widths near surface as well. So there's a little image there of some obviously very spectacular gold. That individual sample over a metre went 2,518 grams. So you can see how much gold there is in a very small area here, and that's what we talk about margins. So this is a deposit that can bring exceptional margins back with gold price at over 2,800 Australian, and you're talking about this gold only being a few metres below the surface. So the extraction costs are very low, which means that the margins are very high. We've got about 58 holes into this, RC holes into the Starlight deposit at the moment. We've got about 9 to 13 diamond holes. We've got further assays pending. We're expecting to get assays every 2 to 3 weeks. And again, we're just leading towards that resource. First resource update for Starlight, which will include with a break of day resource update in Q3. So the intent will be to continue drilling past that point, but that'll be an interim resource update. Just moving on to the next slide again. The white light discovery is about 75 metres south of Starlight. So white light, again, a parallel lode system, and this is just showing this opportunity for repetitions within the belt. So that when we turned the drill rig around to discover Starlight, it was the first time anyone had drilled in this orientation in the entire belt for 100 years. So some of the first operations were very small in this area, but they went all the way back to 1895. So we've obviously turned the rig around, made the new Starlight discovery, but that's opened up a whole new search space for us, which means we can test in this orientation for the entire 28 kilometres of belt. So again, white light, new discovery, 6 metres at 48 grams, no drilling below it. We're doing that at the moment and looking forward to results as they continue to flow through. Just moving on again to the next slide. This regional image just puts things again in perspective. So what we're seeing is Starlight, area there is a little insert, and then on a regional perspective we're looking at gravity. So gravity is looking at the density of the rocks below the surface, where we see gravity lows, obviously low dense rocks, the red colours are the higher more dense rocks, and we see breaks in the gravity. So breaks in continuity of the gravity is suggesting there might be a structure in some of these instances. So we're seeing that at twilight, at Starlight and at white light. And where we see that, we're looking for repetitions of that in the belt. So we've picked up another 18 targets. We're looking forward to starting to drill test those over the coming weeks. We'll have a rig specifically on site to drill test some of these new targets starting in about a week's time. So that'll really confirm this theory about repetitions within the belt. We have the white light. We're looking for more of these type of repetitions. And that's the basis for building the resource from where we are now, through adding Starlight, white light, and then continuing to add new discoveries as we make them over the next 6 to 12 months. This will be a 5,000 metre program on a regional sense, and in a week's time, we should have 4 rigs on site. So just moving on again to the next slide. So this is really putting it in perspective of what we're seeing as infrastructure in the region. There are 5 operating mills within our district, all within 120 kilometres. 2 are close, they're in 40 kilometres. And you can see the purple tenure there is Musgrave's tenure, and Break of Day and Lena where the new Starlight discovery is. So there's lots of opportunity in this district with gold prices the way they are, people can truck dirt a long way, and with the exceptional grades we have, we know that can be trucked a long way on the yield gun. So there's opportunity from an existing producer point of view, but there's also opportunity for us, because what we want to do is be able to get to a position where we can make a standalone decision about development. Moving on to the next slide. This is the Evolution joint venture. The green areas are 100% Musgrave, including the Starlight discovery. And then the yellow and orange areas are the Evolution joint venture. So this is an area on the Salt Lake. It's an 18 million joint venture over 5 years with Australia's third largest gold developer, which is Evolution, obviously. So they're into the second year of this joint venture. Evolution have committed to another $2 million over the next 12 months. We've got a number of targets we're developing on the lake. At the moment, they're early stage, but getting some fantastic results coming through. That for this next financial year has already started. That started earlier this week. And we're looking forward to results flowing from that work as well. Moving on to the next slide. So just putting again what I've been saying in the last few minutes into a context of what we have got going forward. Doing soil geochem and geophysics on the targets we currently have, which is really those regional targets, prioritising those, getting those ready to drill, which will start in a week. RC drilling and diamond drilling at Starlight. Initial stage, we'll drill that down to about 350 vertical metres, which will build into the resource, and then we'll continue to drill past that to try to build the resource further from that point on. Evolution joint venture, as I just mentioned, we've got that rig turning on the Salt Lake. You can see the image there of the rig, and that's what the Salt Lake looks like. It's a dry lake, quite easy to get around with track-mounted vehicles. And then the regional air core, as I mentioned, will happen, and that start in a week. That's 100% Musgrave's ground. So really, in conclusion, just moving on to the next slide. So what we're seeing here as we do move to that last slide, we're seeing an existing resource base that we have for the company. We've got new high-grade discoveries. We think we've got the ability to make some more within the belt, because this is the first time we're turning the rigs around to drill in that northeast direction, which can make these new discoveries like Starlight. We think there's a big exploration upside for us there. Obviously, with the new Starlight discovery, we expect to get high margins on that because of the near-surface high-grade nature of the deposit. We've got the Evolution joint venture, so Evolution is partly funding our exploration on the lake. And we're well funded at the moment. We have $9 million in the bank. So we have high grade, we have good infrastructure in the area. MET testing to date has been really good. We've got samples underway, testing now for Starlight as well. We have all the ingredients, we think, for a very profitable development story going forward. And on top of that, the background to all that, we have a really good Aussie gold price and the expectation that that will continue for a period of time. And that'll probably, more than likely, lead to increasing M&A in the gold space globally. So that's it from Musgrave. Thanks. Happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Rob. Some questions about the gold price. Let's start off. You finished on the gold price. What are your thoughts there?
Look, I think everything we're seeing with the way the world is at the moment with COVID, with the macroeconomics as well, with zero interest rates, there are a lot of factors really leading to a strong gold price over a reasonable period of time going forward. So if you look around, there are really no negative influences really at the moment on the gold price. So I'm hoping and expecting to see a pretty strong gold price going forward. I wouldn't want to predict a number on that, Tim, but but I think the number we have at the moment is pretty good as it is.
I mean, you're in a great position there with, you know, Evolution as a JV partner and things like that. I suppose one of the questions, and the questions coming through in terms of theme, like how do you balance out that cash position and the potential need for more funding as you kind of grow that deposit?
Yeah, no, good question. So obviously, you know, the way the market is, the opportunity for cash, what we're spending at the moment, we're spending roughly around, going forward, once we get the fourth rig on site, about $1 million a month. So with that in mind, there's a fair bit of spend, but also that's building towards a really strong gold price going forward. We have $9 million in the bank. What we want to do is be able to have enough cash, secure that cash to really be able to drill out. The next phase is for us is really building that resource base. So there'll be a fair bit of drilling going forward, but it's always a question, how do you balance that, Tim? Obviously, we discuss that at the board on a regular basis, and at the moment, we've got no further decisions we've made going forward.
Yeah, sure. And so how long does it take in terms of time frame to get into production?
Obviously, the first stage is a resource. You've got the resource base we need to build. Once you go that, you go through to feasibility. Once feasibility is happening, all your permitting is happening. And at the same time, obviously, then you get through the process of actually being acquiring enough cash to actually develop. So at each of those points is a trigger, and you move forward to the next stage. But to summarise, you're really looking at a period of a minimum of 18 months from today before you could ever get to a point of probably producing gold. If you want to do it in a standalone operation, if you want to do it and toll treat it somewhere else and process it in an existing facility, you can shortcut that time frame, but you're still looking probably at 12 months before everything you can do as far as resource and permitting required.
Sure. And the other 17 other possible starlight structures, is there a plan to drill those in the meantime?
Yeah, no, that's what I was mentioning about this. The fourth rig we have turning up on site, hopefully in about a week's time, and that'll start testing on a regional sense what we think might be potential for repetitions within the belt. And there's 18 targets we'll systematically work our way through, again, starting in about a week's time on those new targets.
Great. Okay, that's all we have time for, Rob. Appreciate that. That's a great story. I'm sure a lot of the big boys are watching exactly what you're doing at the moment, given the nature of the gold industry at present.
No worries, always great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, David.
No problem. So that's all we have time for. We appreciate your involvement every Friday. Please watch out for our ShareCafe survey that we'll be also sending out to you all. We'd appreciate you participate in those surveys. It takes a lot of time to put these webinars together. So if you can help us, we can help you. So see you next week.